So I got a letter today that, well, really ticked me off. I'm not sure. It just... So today it's raining. So I'm tucked in here under the well. You can see there's the well roof. It's not a lot of room to sit, but it works. So there's my well. I know the folks that are going to be with this channel for a very long time is going to hear some of this information, and just bear with me. It's good information. I'm sure of it. Speaking of water, water to me is critical. It is the highest priority. I always say there's 4 things you need to survive in life, and that's all that Carolyn and I rely on is food, water, shelter, and defense. We really don't focus much else on anything, but if you had to prioritize it, this has to be at the very top, about 10 steps higher than the other 3. Yes, I know you need shelter and I know you need food, but in the end, that's not so bad. But this is terrible. I mean, as far as a shelter, go get yourself an old camper, a few $100s. It's a piece of junk, who cares, but at least it's a little bit of shelter. Food, go to the grocery store. I mean, that's just simple. But water, if you don't have it and you're miles away from it, it is the worst feeling in the world. So as you know, Carolyn and I traveled the country for 3 or 4 years. I don't know why, I can't remember how many years we did it. So 3 or 4 years we traveled. We started out in a pop-up camper, and we tried to slowly build up into our, they call it boondocking. We're out in the boonies, docking, that's what they call it. We started out in the eastern portion of the United States, and there was this website, the freecampsites.net, I think is what it was called. I don't know if it still exists. And it would tell you places that had water. Some of them had electric, just different things. And so we always went to places that had water, always. And then we realized the internet was almost as important because we had this YouTube channel we had to support. But I'm just going to talk about water today. So when we were on the east, the campsite.net didn't really talk about the quality of the water. We would go to these places and the water was just terrible. It was rusty and nasty and you couldn't drink it, and so you're filtering it and Berkeying it and wasting. Berkeys are $100 to $150 a piece for the replacement filters. And they only last a year with that kind of strain to them. So we went to Virginia. There was a lot of issues with the water. Of course, we went to Mississippi and Tennessee. The water was pretty good there, but when we got into Virginia, they had these old hand pump water wells and all of them are rusty. Well, we went to one place that said they had water with a hand pump well. Turned out it was broke, and we found a natural spring, the water shooting out of the side of the mountain. So we hauled water. Everywhere I want to mention, we hauled water. Buckets like this. We had 8 buckets, I guess, 40 gallons that we carried around. But, you know, we'd have to always go fill them up. And that 40 gallons had to last us 2 weeks. Otherwise, we're off looking for water if we went and got it somewhere else. Now, if we found a campsite that had water, we didn't have to go get it. We used quite a bit of water. But we went to South Dakota, up there in the Black Hills, and we had to find water all the time. It was pretty miserable, and you're carrying it. We even went to just outside the Badlands National Forest, or National Park, Grasslands, whatever it's called. There was a park just a few miles away that we got water from. But I always felt like you're stealing water. I mean, it was publicly accessed, but I don't know. It was just so stressful, constantly looking for water. Well, obviously, as we got better at it, we got a little bit more daring, and we decided to go to Arizona. And Arizona didn't have any water for 100 miles. Now, here's the thing, is when we went to Arizona, we stopped outside the North Rim Grand Canyon, I guess I should say, and there was a RV park there. I think it was federally funded RV park. And so they had these day use areas and the RV park. So we went in and paid our day use fee. My assumption was we would get to buy the water. I think it was $8. I don't remember. So there was additional cost for the water. Well, we got in there. She said, "Oh no, you can't do that." Fortunately, they were nice people, and they let us go ahead and go forward with our plan of getting the water. But had they would not given us the water, I don't know what we would have done. Then we went into Utah, Red Rock National Forest or something like that. That was pretty nice. They had a stream there. It was terrible climb. I had to climb this rock wall. It was terrible. But I would go down there with 2 buckets at a time and I'd dip up water. It was the purest water I seen from natural. And then I would filter it through my house filters, and then we would Berkey it. We used a lot of water there for some reason. Well, it was just extremely hot, so we used a ton of water. But it was just always so hard to find water. So eventually, we gave up the lifestyle, and we wanted to find an off-grid property. The one thing I told Carolyn is we absolutely have to find a place with water. She found 2 places. She found this place and 10 acres. The 10 acres was $7,200, and this acre and a half was $4,200. And I know people are thinking, I know people think we are crazy that we got this place instead of that place. But that place needed a lot of work, more so than this one. And also it was a few $1,000s more, which we had the money, but it had a stream going through it, and it had a well. But I bet we would have had to pay another $10,000 just to get access into the property, and it was just a lot more money than I wanted to spend. And this here, Carolyn and I just liked better. But when we came to visit this place, well, the first place we stopped at, I couldn't even find the well. It was at nighttime though, unfortunately. But then the spring, I know the stream, people drove through to get into their homes. So it had all that contamination from the vehicles. I wasn't too trusting that we were going to be able to use that water. And that was my primary idea. At the time, I had no idea how we were going to get water out of a well. So I figured, well, we'll just use this stream. Then I saw that everybody was driving through it, and I thought, well, I don't know. It's kind of risky. She had this one as a backup plan. And I wasn't too excited about this place at first until I got here. She was overly excited about this place the whole time. When we first walked down here, there was snow on the ground. It was hard to see anything. Plus there was briar patches everywhere. It was hard to walk through. It was just painful. So we came down and didn't find the well. And we walked back up to the truck. We didn't park the truck on the property because it was snow covered. And I thought, this is a terrible idea. Us trying to find property with a well, it's just terrible. I mean, it's got to be our number one priority. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to look again. And I'm glad I did, because we came back down here and here it was. It was behind some tree limbs and lumber and stack up. It was not easy to get to, but it was here. So I immediately went and got Carolyn's coffee cup. That's the only thing we had. I went ahead and replaced it, but we grabbed the coffee cup, and she had some yarn because she was doing crochet. I took that coffee cup, put a rock in it. Well, first thing I did was I lowered that cup down to see if I had water in it. Sure enough, that cup started bouncing. Well, I wanted to see what the water looked like, how deep the water was, all that stuff. So I pulled the cup back up, put a rock in there, and tried to balance the cup so it would go down flat. Got it to sink, and I think there was 30 foot of water. Pulled it back up, and it looked pretty clean. I had to do a lot of thinking. I had to think, how am I going to power a well pump? Because all I knew about well pumps was they were 220. Well, I didn't even know back then that, they may not even had them, but 220 inverters, I just wasn't sure how we were going to do. Plus, I needed my generator to be able to run it. I didn't have one of those big generators. I had that little inverter generator, and it was only 2,000 watts, so it had to be able to run the well pump. Well, I immediately got on Amazon, and I started looking, and I found well pumps that ran off 110. And I bought an inverter at the time because I thought 1,000 watts should run it, but when we got it, the inverter didn't run it. We were still at Mom's house, so I'm testing everything at Mom's house. This is critical, that I was testing everything at Mom's house. If we'd have gotten down here and had to test everything, it'd have been a nightmare. But over at Mom's, it was a little bit closer to resources, so we worked on everything down there, or up there, actually. So we got the trash can out, we put the pump in there, and I tried to run it off that 1,000 watt inverter. It wouldn't run it. It takes 2,000 watts. And then I plugged in a generator, and the generator ran it. So I thought, okay, problem solved. Now we got all this figured out. And then we had to find the plumbing, because that pump took strange size of this black pipe. I don't remember what size it is, but it was strange. Every place we went didn't have the size we needed. And I really wanted to get the right size because I didn't understand well pumps at the time. But really, it doesn't matter what size you get. You can buy adapters and different things. I was worried that if we restricted the water flow with a smaller size, I would burn up the pump, but that's not the case. So smaller size, I mean, we even run this little garden hose off of it now, so it's really not a big deal. As long as you don't deadhead it, it's called deadhead. Drove all over the place, east side of Missouri, center of Missouri. I wanted to make sure that we had our water problems resolved. I wanted to have a 99% confidence level that we would have water when we got here. So the first day we took the camper off the truck, and then the next day we put the well pump in. And we pumped water out, and it was filthy dirty, and it worried me. Everything about this thing just worried me. It just worried me sick. But we worked through the little issues, and finally, after 2 years, this thing runs perfectly. And it only costs about $500 to update it, get it updated and running well and clean. I'm really glad we have it. But since then, we have found a natural spring down the hill that we can use. If something were ever to happen to this well, dry up or whatever. If we ever had to get this replaced, it's not overly expensive to replace it. $5,000 is about average, is what I'm figuring. To dig a well is about $40 to $60 a foot. So this is a 100-foot well. You figure it up, it's $4,000 to $6,000. So on average, about $5,000. I have repeatedly seen YouTube channels go out to their adventure to live off grid, and it seems like water is one of the last things they're thinking about. And it absolutely has to be the first thing you're thinking about. You got to have a solid plan and know 100% that it's going to work, or at least have a 95% confidence level it's going to work. A lot of people seem to think they're going to collect rainwater, but in order to collect rainwater, you got to have roof. We live in a tiny house. We don't have a lot of roof. And you can go on Google and find out how much rainwater versus roof space you need. You know, if you live in Arizona, you're going to have a huge roof. But if you live in Missouri, you can have a smaller roof. But if you're going to have cows and pigs and chickens and all that, you got to have more water. But the one thing I don't think you want to do is go get your water. It's a nightmare. I mean, I learned from experience, getting water is a nightmare. If you have a 275-gallon IBC tank, then you got to have something to be able to carry that much water. I mean, it's 8 pounds per gallon, so you're up like 2,200 pounds, something like that. Can your truck hold it? Once you get that water home, how are you going to get the water to a usable state? Transfer it to another IBC tank, a pump, whatever you have. You don't want water to be a constant chore. It's a nightmare. It's just, it makes you want to quit, which is what Carolyn and I did. We quit the nomadic life. So I got an email or comment or whatever that I felt like I was being blamed for their mistake. They said they got a piece of property, dream come true and all that stuff, but the well's going to cost $36,000 and they can't afford it. Well, I don't know how many times I've told you, you got to have a plan about your water before you go buy your property. I did a little bit of research today on wells and costs and all that. There is an off-grid channel that I watch, and they got to a spot in Arizona, and their initial idea was they were going to have water delivered. 3,000-gallon truck comes in, delivers it, puts it in their cistern. Well, the truck got stuck in Arizona, and they won't deliver it out there. Damaged the truck, they had to get towed out. So now they don't have water. Of course, they come up with a solution. They're going to go to the neighbor's house, they're going to fill IBC tanks, and they're going to bring it back, fill their cisterns back and forth, back and forth. But that's just a nightmare in my mind. Now, I don't know what kind of confidence level that they had that it was going to work, but my guess is they weren't too confident it was going to work because they were concerned that their travel trailer wasn't going to be able to make it through this spot where it got stuck. So if the travel trailer isn't going to make it, I'm sure they were worried about the water. It's got to be your number one priority. I watched another off-grid channel, and they're going to a natural spring to fill buckets. So that first off-grid channel, they were saying that one neighbor of theirs dug a well and it was 50 feet down. So $50 to $60 a foot, 50 feet down. I mean, you're talking $2,500, not bad at all. But their other neighbor dug down 1,000 feet and didn't get any water. So they paid $40 to $60,000 for nothing. The other thing is I've tried to do a lot of research, trying to figure out if a well is worth it to raise your property value. Because I mean, if you're spending $36,000 on a well, you're never going to drink that much water for it to pay for itself. It will never pay for itself. So that means your property value has to go up in value. And I know what's happening is people's going out to Arizona and finding cheap property. Yeah, I found property for $100, but then they go have to dig a well for $36,000. The property is not going to go up to value $36,000. Well, only lasts, they say, 40 to 50 years. I know this one didn't last. I've had to replace everything. If you're going to sell it, it has to be a functional well. You're not going to get $36,000 out of your property because you put a well in place. It's a bad idea to go off grid and having your water as your last thought. Water's got to be your number one priority. And you certainly shouldn't accuse anybody else that you've made a mistake going off grid without thinking about water, because I am constantly talking about water. This channel has covered this subject, like I said at the beginning of the video, probably more times than I can count. It's so critical. I don't know how anybody could blame me that I didn't warn you about water. You gotta have water. Don't start it unless you have a plan. I mean, a solid plan, not one like, well, maybe we'll dig a well. I got a few $100. Fortunately, I was able to fix this one for $500. So you gotta think about that. So if you click this up next box to take the video where I was talking about a judge has taken away my civil liberties. So if I can inspire you to be serious about water, so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.